Welcome to Mindful AI, the podcast where we explore how to create AI that is beneficial to humanity, ethical, and promotes human values and flourishing. What happens when AI ethics meets skateboarding through downtown Johannesburg? Today on the Mindful AI podcast, we're joined by Nazareen Ebrahim, South African AI ethicist, international speaker, and passionate advocate for diverse voices in artificial intelligence. From a chance conversation at Web Summit in 2018 to working with Indigenous communities on AI data sovereignty, Naz challenges us to ask whose perspectives are missing from the technology shaping our world. If you've ever wondered who's steering AI and how we can all play a role, this conversation is for you. If you find this episode insightful, please subscribe to Mindful AI and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us bring more of these important and meaningful conversations to you and others.
Wonderful. All right. So great to be back. And today we have Nazareen Ebrahim, or Naz for short. So I'm very, very glad to have you here with us, Naz. So thank you for accepting the invitation.
Thrilled to be here. You've interviewed such great voices in the industry. So just to be joining that pool of wonderful people is just incredible. So thank you both for the invitation.
You're welcome. You're very modest, Naz. So, Naz, I think I would like to start with, we met probably 2020, so nearly 5 years ago, when when I wrote the Mindful AI manifesto and connected with you on LinkedIn. I think I saw a post or a video of you talking to this robot, and was something related to Accenture, so it really called my attention. And that's how we started the dialogue. And it's been 5 years. So I would like to, and there's a lot that people can find about you online. You're very vocal, you're very active especially in the African continent. So there's a lot that we can find. But what is one thing, one personal fact about you that we cannot find publicly? If you'd like to share, please.
You may not find it publicly. There is one Instagram video. Now, please follow me on Instagram. No, that's not a plug. But if you go to my Instagram videos, I love skateboarding. And I don't typically look like a person who skateboards, but then who looks like typically anything that we do, right? I went on this trip or this tour that is offered by, I can't remember the name of the group now. They offer skateboarding on the streets of Johannesburg. I mean, downtown Johannesburg, where the taxis are going, and minibus taxis, which you associate with South Africa and Africa. We had a police van go past us. They were kind enough not to chuck us out of the way, but that was very cool. And we got to see some really incredible landmarks, like a massive book warehouse that has books that are even classics, and it's stacked. If you go past the building, the books are stacked from ceiling to floor. So if you walk in, it's just the most incredible thing. So I found that really thrilling. But books, architecture, skateboarding, totally my vibe.
Yeah, that's like I said, it wouldn't. We always try to find like a link back to mindfulness, but I guess skateboarding in downtown Johannesburg does require a bit of mindfulness.
Indeed, it does, Martin, especially when the taxis are coming at you and they own the road more than anybody else. So it's either you or them, or one of you.
Totally. And focus and, balance as well, so lots of skills there involved in.
Totally. Good question. Good point. Balance, totally balance, especially not moving your hip in the right direction. And then you kind of chuck yourself off on the pavement. Not a good look.
So now changing gears, Naz, would be great to hear from you a little bit of like a quick snapshot overview of your career, especially in this space of technology, and when you got involved with AI, responsible ethical AI, and the work you've been doing. So what attracted you to this area, since when you've been involved in this space, and what's happening now?
Thank you so much for the question, Naz. It's always nice to revisit the lens from which you started, or what motivated the courage to join, because really it takes a lot of courage to veer off into a new career direction. I have a background as a communications expert and technology analysis, and I don't say technologist where I'm doing the strategy on infrastructure development or infrastructure output for organizations, but more the analysis of the impact of that text output on the end user. And I've done that for the last 20 years. But as with any good professional, like you, Martin, myself, we continually every 3 or 4 years are reassessing, reanalyzing where we're going and how to remain relevant. And for me, that change or turning point came in 2018, but really it was through just a simple conversation. I was a communications freelancer, consultant. I went from South Africa to Portugal for Web Summit. I had an opportunity to sit down with a VC from San Francisco, and I don't remember the gentleman's name. I will find it, but he's played such a pivotal role in my career, though he doesn't know it, just by a simple 30-minute conversation. All he asked me was, where are you from? South Africa. What do you do? I work in communications. Do you know about the AI for Good movement? Yes, I do, but not... I haven't invested myself fully, but I have been doing quite a bit of research, so I'm familiar with it, yes. Okay, go back.
Oops.
Go back to South Africa and get involved in the AI for Good movement. And I took him at his word. Sometimes you have conversations with people and you think, okay, I'll explore it at some other time. I came back. So that was November 2018. December 2019, I get onto Instagram, the brave person I am. You know, at the time, doing Facebook Lives, Instagram Lives. But I mean, back in 2016, I think Facebook Live was a big thing. It had just been released. But doing it back then in 2018, 2019, it had caught on and it was an accepted thing. I went on and I promised very bravely, as one does, that I would write a 12-part AI series for the next 12 days and release one part per day. And I would update people on social media. You know, you must shower, eat, pray, buy groceries, full fuel, and then you must write this series thing every day, right? So I committed to it, but I did it. I think I missed one day, and really I was so hard on myself, but I had released this 12-part AI series. What is AI? What is machine learning? What is deep learning? What is data management? What is ethics? And bravely, again, I keep using the words courageous and bravely because I think when you're very naive, you need a great deal of courage and bravery. And released this 12-part AI series. And I did a kind of a middle check-in. Okay, part 6, have you read the articles? There wasn't a lot of uptake. And only my friends liked and reacted. No family, friends, and fools are going to be your first cheerleaders. So they were my first cheerleaders, as they all have been throughout the years, as you have been, Nat, since I've met you. And that just kind of then really got me understanding, because I was able to understand then I had this real passion I have a passion for human rights. I'm a passionate human rights activist in any form or role I can play. And that tends to come across in my work. And when I discovered that I had a natural inclination to understanding and articulating what this technology that was rapidly developing and its impact on the end user peoples would look like, and how I could do that effectively from having a communications background, it seemed a natural evolution point. And that's how it began. Then went on into 2019, the universe aligned things, got me into a mentorship program with Lighthouse Consulting in the US. I got Kay Butterfield as a mentor, who was then head of AI, machine learning at the World Economic Forum. And Sam's your uncle, well, not Sam in this case, but Bob's your uncle, whoever you want to be your uncle. And it's been really an interesting case from there, because I will say this, having Kay as a mentor, to me as a person of color, as a woman from a developing economy in South Africa, it was really a turning point. And this talks to what sponsorship means for people being your representative in spaces that you can't speak for yourself. So through her introductions and letting me link up with people to have necessary conversations gave me a foot in the door to be able to start developing the voice. And that was an important change in that career. And I think for people listening, you have to understand that people from developing countries we get opportunities through a sponsorship opportunity like I had, or you are getting what we consider lucky enough to be included on research projects in important grants that are given by global tech organizations that seem to say, yes, come to the third world country, give you this grant. We're doing empowerment, development, research and development, and go ahead and stake your claim. And so this is an important distinction to make.
So in the Mindful AI podcast, we try our best, to keep a balanced view, of as you know, we have many researchers in the AI space and professionals in AI that, can be quite pessimist about the direction things are going. Others are very optimistic. We try to bring, both views, so we have a balanced approach. So the next question I'd like to ask you is around the benefits, and it's a very, very broad question. With your experience, your exposure, what are the high level, the broader, or the first top benefits that comes to mind when you think of implementation of AI, for humanity in general? You spoke about AI for good, and we know there are many, many case studies out there, being implemented, from healthcare to, you name it. But what comes to mind when we talk about AI for good, benefits for humanity?
The first thing that comes to mind for me in the research that I've been doing, but also more observation. For us as AI ethicists and the diverse backgrounds that we come from, and I know that my peers will find cognizance in this, is that the observation, as much as the research, is equally important. An observation by speaking to someone on the plane, or walking around in your local community and looking at people, talking to someone in the grocery line at the store, and asking them just a general question around what is your impact? How do you feel when you use your tools, when you use your mobile? What network are you on? Are you using TikTok Lite? Are you using Facebook Lite? Or have you seen this latest video that's come out? And this observation I found has been incredibly useful to shaping what benefit looks like, which is important when you read things like recommendation reports from global organizations, namely UNESCO, IEEE, or any other organization that does localized research level in different countries. And you may find, which I found in a report, where it said, this, while we may have engaged a range of stakeholders from civil society, selection of civil society, public, private sector, etc., there has been a lack of on-the-ground engagement, which is interesting to see that the on-the-ground engagement is difficult to secure when that is the heart of where you are going to find the absolute of what it is you are looking for in terms of the challenges, exactly what the technology means to people. The responsible digital citizenry is where we are going. And that's at the heart of it. So why is it such a challenge? Why is it specifically mentioned in the report? And if that is missing, then it doesn't fully enhance or optimize the full view of the actuals of what the challenges are on the ground. So when you look at the benefits, the benefit is talking to people. The benefit is understanding the digital citizenry. And they are the people on the ground. It reminds me of Zohran Mamdani, who's running for the New York City mayoral candidacy. And he's been lauded across the board, mostly, if you take into account his adversaries, like former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who was, I heard on Bloomberg the other day, I have to talk about this. I know I have free rein to do so, but it was very fun to hear his conversation attacking Mamdani, but not from any basis. There was no basis. And it was interesting also that he was hosted on Bloomberg, because, of course, founder of Bloomberg, Michael Bloomberg, is a financial backer and supporter of Andrew Cuomo. And I found that quite interesting. Now, all of these observations and things and talking on the ground, it makes sense only when it's in action, when you're consistent in the messaging, when you're looking at it. We find I don't want to go off at a tangent, but the point I'm making is that active citizen engagement on an ongoing basis, observation and key critical understanding from an AI ethicist point of view, from people building on the teams who are building these technologies, is key and is crucial. And That's the benefit of having diverse voices in AI from an ethics point of view, because we are able to bring a perspective that may not be easily recognizable or shared by the skilled professionals in the industry. I spoke at a recent university, very prominent university here in South Africa, University of Johannesburg, at the Faculty of Law. I will be frank with you. When I have given so many talks in my career, but when I went there, the dean of the Faculty of Law was there, including the vice dean, and many senior lecturers, professors from the department. And I was nervous as hell. I thought, oh my God, communications background, I'm doing AI ethics. How do I
What am I doing
justify
here?
what am I doing here? How do I justify that I too can talk about regulation policy? And it was a mistake, right? Because as much as I am a seasoned professional speaker and I have conviction in what I'm delivering and I know there's value, but I was not happy with my intro because I knew that the nervousness came out in that. And this was unfounded, because afterwards I had interaction in the question and answer session. And of course, all of us as professionals, Nat, you, Martin, you've got this foundational institutional knowledge that's built day on day, that if someone speaks to you, it starts coming through to substantiate your point of view. And this is exactly what happened. And it only made me then realize, talking to one of the professors, saying to me, how are you so learned? We didn't know half of the things that you were talking about. So very interesting to understand why diverse voices are important. And that's the benefit to AI ethics.
Wow. Okay, I could go many places. Thank you, Martin.
Let us go.
Anything comes to mind that you'd like to comment or connect?
Yeah, I don't know. I just in terms of the positive benefits, potential positive benefits of AI, I am kind of hoping that AI will help us, step out of the bias and distortion that unfortunately shaped so much of public discourse. The world is full of conspiracy theories and tribalism and science denial and all these things. So my hope is that AI will actually be a tool that can help us see things more clearly and attune with reality, I guess. And do you think that's a naive hope? Because we also have the aspect of bias being entered into these systems in the training. But do you think if trained on sufficient data, it will actually not get stuck with the noise, but actually find the signal and help us see things more clearly moving forward? What's your thoughts on that?
Share your optimism, Martin, because ultimately that's my perspective. I'm always, but also cautiously optimistic, being unfortunately a Capricorn who must bring a sense of realism into it, which is good and bad. But to your point around data, let's look at the different parts of the question. So you asked, can we effectively remove the things that are true dangers to the development and evolution of society going into the future, because we are in the industrial age of AI? And the thing that worries me is that the current training data of which we are challenging at the moment is what informs all of the massive models that we are participating in and contributing to. And these massive models have been trained on data that comes with you can already put a label on it. Mind the pun of data labeling, but when you label the kind of data that's been put on it, it comes from a Western philosophy, and the people who have trained this are particularly white male developers. This is what we hear consistently over and over and over again. This is not to say, Martin, that your point of view does not matter and that is not important and that is biased. Not at all. That is not what is being said. But the point of view from that perspective means it disregards everything else. Like you think about the perspective of women's healthcare and what women's healthcare, when it looks like in the realm of research, development of drugs, the use cases that are applied for women versus men in the application of healthcare as an example. And so when you come back to the point of, can we be optimistic enough that this data, it can be trained differently? We know a couple of things. We know that the current training sets may be problematic. We also know that the data that's being fed out daily, by the minute, the trillions of bits of data that are going in and feeding, helping to go through some sense of process flow to structure it and feed it back into the model. And then the model learning itself, there is a fundamental challenge there. And the fundamental challenge I am finding is that the owners of these technologies that have multiple agendas, be it economic, political, social, whatever that may be, their willingness to build these massive conglomerates of sheer buying power, therefore power. You look at the example of Larry Ellison, Oracle, being involved in Project Stargate, being a major shareholder in TikTok, his son then buying up Paramount Pictures and buying other various large, massive houses that are able to control narratives, data, sentiment, and feed people. These things are particularly worrying for people, and we should be worried. Also, the kind of statements that are made by the people that are in their circle. President Donald Trump of the US now saying that furloughed workers in the US, because of the shutdown, which enters its 7th or 8th day in the US at the moment, and for anyone watching this, hopefully we would have passed the shutdown at the time, but saying that furloughed workers may not be paid back. That kind of sentiment, ICE running all over the US, kidnapping people, throwing them into vehicles with no recourse at all. These things are deeply worrying. The use of, the accepted use of terms to say that we must control the narrative by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is committing the genocide in Palestine right now, saying to social media influencers, we must control the use tools of weapons or the weapons available to us, which right now is social media. All of this impacts the sentiment, the tone, the narrative, the data sets, the data points, the kind of viewpoint that we have, which then is ultimately fed back into these models. Because I know, I have experienced myself, you have experienced, people are talking about this at length in media spaces, in independent media spaces, around how they are shadow banned, how they are served content that serves a certain narrative of the social media platforms. And I will give you an example. I was on Facebook the other day on my newsfeed. Suggested pages and groups were suggested pages and groups of everything to do with me supporting Israel. Now, if Facebook knows me, which they should since 2007, they would know I am pro-Palestinian. I speak unequivocally about all types of human rights issues, from the Congo DRC to Rohingya and Uyghur Muslims in China and what is going on in that region, to what is happening in Russia and Ukraine, to children mining minerals for cell phones, the things that we are seeing that may sound like we're activists, even if Donald Trump thinks that Greta Thunberg is a troublemaker, which you see, the terminology, the languaging, and the narrative that's continually fed, Martin, to your point. And I often do this and I say, oh, I'm so sorry I'm going over time. I'm really passionate about the subject, but I'm not sorry. We must say these things. Even if it's tiring to hear them, we must say them. So thank you for asking me the question. And yes, these are the things that are important to us, and these are the things we must talk about.
Yeah, and I guess then the follow-up is how do we get ourselves out of that trap? What is the role of AI and responsible AI governance in this, to get those, I guess, even voices maybe of indigenous cultures or whatever it might be, into the training of these data sets, I guess.
It's a really great question. I feel like we are not caught between a rock and a hard place, but trying to get a sense of what works initially to go to market, which is the business point of view, and what works for business to serve humanity as a whole. This is something I have been thinking about. So if you take, as an example, the South African context and African context, there are a few companies or projects here and I'll name two of them, Lelafa.ai, Masakani project, that are actively building out lower resource models or localized data sets in order to bring equity and fairness to the representation of people here. And to be able to, and they've built out a model called Vula Vula, I think, that is able to communicate from their large language model, their models that they are building out. It is a model in the local language. So talk to it, and then it will talk back to you in any number of the languages they're coding in. Afrikaans, of course, is available, English, Zulu, Xhosa, and a range of other languages I don't remember. I must check out their website. Their CTO, Jade Abbott, is an exceptional human being and a good friend of mine. And I was speaking to her recently about why this is so important. They really are a values-based company. So I love the work that they're doing. But I don't want to lose my train of thought, Martin. So let me hand this back to you so you can pick up and remind me what we are talking about. I got excited about AI.
No, I guess just how we steward AI in the right direction and make it as unbiased and undistorted as possible. Yeah.
Can it really be unbiased? I mean, will anything in life? And is it not that we are born with a natural bias, an inherent bias to things in any case? And Nat? Yes, I know.
I have something. I don't know if it's going to help. It's going to distract you even further, Naz, but I'm going to jump in and say what's coming up for me. It's this lecture that I saw, I think Shannon Veller, Cambridge or Oxford University, can't remember, British. She was here in the Melbourne University last year or the year before, and she published the book Mirror AI or AI Mirror. A message that stayed with me, which is very obvious, nothing new, it's not rocket science, but after watching her keynote, is that, and we heard this many times, and I'm not using this as an excuse, just as another data point, is that AI is mirroring what we have now, right? AI is mirroring society, but it's even not, because back to your point, Naz, the representation of data is actually not, majority, white, male, Western society point of view. That's the data that most of the models, I would say, I don't know if it's an arbitrary comment, have been fed with. So I think we are in a situation where the data used for training, it's a very, very tiny representation of the population on planet Earth right now. And then even if we, and I still believe we should aim for a larger representation, a more, legit or fair representation. So the training models actually are reflecting really humanity. But even when we get to that stage, it only would be as good as, reality, because AI will be then mirroring reality, which goes back to the first place. The first issue that we have, it's we do have bias in the world, yes, but I think it's exacerbated because of your point of having just a small representation being used to train those models. So I'll just pause there. I don't know if it helps or hinder, but I thought that would be, just bring that.
Absolutely helps. And thank you for reminding me of Martin's initial point, which is about how will we address this problem? Can we address this problem? And this is what I've been thinking about, which Martin is where I started. I said I was thinking about this, so I am thinking about it. And what I'm thinking about is, there's two parts. The people building the technology have compute data models. They have these resources that are so intensive and so expensive that they are able to build and guide the direction of that journey that we are all on at this point. So unfortunately, that is where we are, because that is the economics and the nature of the world at the moment. The people with the most amount of data, compute and modeling, capability for modeling, therefore the skill sets and the resources, offering people massive pay packages like Meta is, can build out this tech, onboard what I think I heard Greg Brockman, COO of OpenAI yesterday on an interview, say that they have 880 million monthly active users of ChatGPT. Stand to be corrected. Please check that stat and put it up on the screen. But I remember
I
him
think
saying
I
this.
saw, like 800 million is what was in my memory. So yeah,
Yes,
it's a lot of people.
that's a lot of people. And I will tell you, Martin, Nat, I was hanging laundry at the time outside when I was listening to that interview. So it gave me enough brain power in order to keep that thing in my head to understand that actually there are close to 1 billion monthly active users, which is mental when you think about it, but real. And so I was talking in my work with Center for AI, AI and Digital Policy in one of our clinics. I had the opportunity to have in my team a research group member from, is it Montreal? I think. I can't remember now, but her name is Sophie. And Sophie is very involved in doing Indigenous research with her local community because she belongs to a certain Native American group. I don't know the specifics right now, and I don't want to get it wrong by mispronouncing any names, but her work was particularly involved in understanding the needs of her Indigenous group and representing that back in AI. So for me, that was an important case study of how would that research then inform effectively the training of data. What would the collection of the data look like? What would the compensation of those people look like for the data that's been taken from them? What is their consent looking like? And what might that look like in the larger scheme of things to serve them effectively if they are using an AI tool for content generation, for healthcare purposes, to monitor their crops, to be able to do emergency rescue work, to go into dangerous places if there's a natural disaster? What might that look like if they are being polled for elections or they are served marketing for election purposes, etc., etc.? Those big use cases serve citizenry, and a digital citizenry is everyone with a cell phone, with an internet connection, with an email or a cell phone ID, right? But because the compute data and models are owned by small people, a small number of people, not small people, but small number of people, because no one is small, we honor the dignity of every single human being on earth, and their right to exist, their right to have the universal freedoms we do that are enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Because that power is centered in these spaces, they unfortunately have laid the playing field for what is mainstream use. And that mainstream use is a certain pool of data that's being collected in order to inform the build of this machine or this engine that's serving populations across the globe in one standard language, which is English. That in itself is a massive feat. The cost of data centers is astronomical. They're taking out, OpenAI is investing, they've said in their deal with AMD, are taking Martin, Nat, is it one gigahertz? I can't remember the unit of computing power that they would require, but they've booked for 6. I imagine that's a massive amount of energy and resourcing in terms of chips. And they're then talking about who is going to fuel the infrastructure, and they're talking about Oracle as a possible partner. And these partnerships are quite interesting looking at the landscape because they're all starting to get partnerships. Microsoft didn't just stop with OpenAI. They now have a partnership with Anthropic to fuel the number of options available to customers, both enterprise and consumer base, the overall consumer base. These are interesting things that you're asking.
Thanks, Naz. I was just listening to you. I was like, okay, time. We're running out of time. There's so much that I would like to explore. However, we spoke about the benefits. We started there. I think the conversation flowed naturally into concerns and risks. I think we already kind of covered that. Going back to having that balanced view. And you touched already on the CAIDP, the Center for AI Digital Policy, which, a question that I had for you was, sorry, without breaking too much the flow of where you were going, if you had any organizations in mind that, back to the Martin's point of, because I'm listening to you and I'm like, okay, there is no going back, right? As I think we said the other day, Martin, the toothpaste is out of the tube, right?
Yes.
There is no going back, unfortunately. So if we put our solution hat on, and I'm thinking circle of control.
Is it
Stephen
stripy?
Covey.
Is it stripy toothpaste or is it plain toothpaste? Because this is an important distinction.
I mean, if it's stripy, it's even harder to get it back in the tube. So yeah.
Yes, it's true. True.
So if we put our, being perhaps a little bit ambitious and naive, if we put our solution hat on, thinking of circle of control from Stephen Covey, I don't know if you're familiar, Naz, with circle of control. What is within, it's actually is in the Mind for AI Manifesto website, because I use that as a bit of a metaphor. What is within
because I'm an ambassador, so.
that we can do somehow to influence in a positive way what's happening. And very, very briefly, because I don't want to bring you back that, but your point around language, we had Mike Spaeth the other day here that I actually connected you with him from the USAII Institute. And I asked him about infrastructure, because it's great that we have models being developed and fed with other languages, but infrastructure is predominantly based in the US, as far as I'm aware, and data centers, in other areas as well. Yes. So if we put our solution hat on, Naz, what is within our power that we can do right now? So people listening to us, they feel actually encouraged. What is the tiny little action? What is within our power? Normal citizens, if we are AI professionals or not, people listening to this, what do you think we can do other than, if we think about sustainability, people talk about, be conscious how you use your money. Every dollar that you spend, how do you, that's one way to influence, and contribute to a more sustainable, environment. So in terms of AI, what is there, if anything, that we can do to influence, and even, sorry, I'm guilty now, because when we talk AI, something that I was listening to you and I was thinking, and I think many organizations, even researchers, have trouble in defining what is AI. So we're talking about the definition of AI. We are feeding AI with the correct language. We are talking about one particular model, and in your case with your Montreal team, working with the Native Americans to feed that model with the data that is relevant. So is that when we say AI, we don't have an entity AI, right? We have solutions and models and all these components. So it's interesting when, and this is not a question, just more observation. Whenever we use AI, is actually, there is no such a thing, right? I mean, of course, we have ChatGPT, which is the most popular tool that we have at the moment. But yeah. Anyway, I'll zip here. So I guess the word is solutions. So what can we do? What's within our power in terms of influence in the right direction? Does anything come to mind? Or maybe an organization which is a bit of a role model in that space? I don't know. Anything around solution?
It's such an interesting
or
question.
Positive influence.
Because, solutioning is what we are all trying to do, whether it's from an organizational perspective, from an individual perspective where you're working in the field. You have a real interest and passion. You're adding value in terms of conversation to educate people. I think, of course, there's a lot of talk about the AI bubble at the moment, and that is going to burst or increase, or something is going to happen. Whether that bubble is very sensitive and delicate, or it's got a certain amount of malleability to its surface, we'll see. But the solutioning around how do we protect ourselves, when you asked that question, the first thing that came into my mind was, please, kids, don't go and willingly put your photos on these AI generation tools, although your photos are absolutely available everywhere, because you're easily then cast into some porn star role, which is becoming an increasing risk and danger to our kids. And that's the first thing that came into my mind when I heard you asking the question, what's the solution? So we really do live in a different age. And I admire all parents with your kids, teenage kids. I really admire you, because the age you are living in is by far one of the hardest we've had to face, I think. We come from the generation, I suppose I'm come from the last of the generation where we were in analog and we moved into digital, but we somehow became natives to the digital world. And we understand what it means to have a certain level of safety, because we were naive enough not to know a lot of the things that kids at the time when we were 14, 13, 12, that they know now, have access to, or are in front of. This also brings me to the point, Nat, and why maybe I remembered him was because Tristan Harris, I saw an interview with him from the Center for Humane Technology. Now, you asked about organizations. Of course, Center for AI in Digital Policy is number one for me in terms of gold standard of what they are doing to capacitate, empower, and educate diverse voices from around the world in order to understand the layer that is called AI ethics. It is a very particular area, because you've got to really get a sense of understanding what is for what. Meaning, is news news? How do I engage at a public policy level? And what might that look like for local groups on the ground? And those are important distinctions, because you don't just go ahead and say, I'm an AI ethicist and what is it? Oh, I fight for human rights. Okay, cool. What does it look like really on the ground? Are you doing the thing? Are you asking the right questions? Are you, talking to people? Nat, I think you have a thought there.
Thank you. I did. Sorry. I was just
please, go
listening
ahead.
to one of your videos online on YouTube. You were talking, I think it was last year, with a TV channel about the release of ChatGPT-O, the Omni version. And I don't know if that actually is really available already, but what came to mind is how across you are, the technical aspects, Naz. You're not just talking. You're very close to actually, to a technical level. Is quite impressive with your background.
Thank you for saying that. I hope it remains so. It's difficult to keep up.
And what came to mind with your work with CAIDP, and for those listening, Merv Hickok, which we interviewed a few episodes ago, she's the president, I think, of CAIDP that Naz is referring to. I think there was one statement that Merv did during the interview about the number of pages that one of the reports was created by CAIDP, and I was like, oh my God, which I think it was in the thousands, and I couldn't help to think. I was like, wow, how do we translate this regulation, this policy, to what can be done and what cannot be done in the coding, in the solution architecture level, and Martin being a tech entrepreneur, I believe, he had the same probably a thought as well when we hear regulation and policies. And by all means, my background is in governance, in data analytics governance, so I'm all about policies and regulations, but I know that we need to translate that into what does that mean. I spoke with a CIO earlier today. He's in Canberra right now, and working around regulations and creating a maturity assessment model to help people to make sense of regulation. Now we need to comply. What do we do with this? What does that mean? So, I just want to park that on the side. If you want to go there, you can. But that's something that came to mind, regulations and policy. How do we translate? Because I think you probably can speak with some level of authority and comfort, I guess. Yeah, if you want, but you don't need to.
No, but
go back to where we were, if you remember.
Because I was actually going to use the maturity framework assessment that was done and released by Fair Forward GIZ here in South Africa in association with the Department of Communications, Digital Technologies, and a few other partners. I think UCT University of Cape Town was one of them. So if you go onto University of Cape Town's website, you will find this maturity assessment framework that was released, I think, about a month and a half ago by various partners. And what it aims to do is to give you a sense of the landscape in South Africa for AI literacy, AI development, skill set, etc., according to different parameters. So I'm glad you used the words maturity framework. They were in my mind and you took it out. And why that's important for me, what you've mentioned is you asked a question, which is what I am currently thinking of, my area of focus. How are we taking these things that are very nice to have in terms of representation for thought leadership from a national sovereign perspective into actuals, deliverables, execution, practical application? This is where my thinking is at the moment. And the thinking there is, the first thing is education. UCT, again, University of Cape Town, with, I think it's the Center for Global Governance. I stand to be corrected, but Dr. Rachel Adams, do not take offense if I have incorrectly named the institution for which you are part of and do extensive research. There are quite a few organizations, so forgive me if I mix them up. But I know I read an article, again, from University of Cape Town a few days ago saying that they did research into AI literacy across 3,000 people. And 1 in 3 South Africans don't know about AI or much about it. That was the stat. So I found that quite interesting. So, of course, the first thing is, as much as we have a South African national AI policy that is coming out as a finally approved, released policy later this year, hopefully, or going into the new year. I heard our Department of Communications and Digital Technologies make the announcement, as well as the maturity assessment framework we referred to. We have a 4th Industrial Revolution Presidential Commission that had given free rein to a group of individuals that were tasked with setting up an AI institute, doing AI labs across the country, of which there is a military AI center at Saldanha Bay, which is a military base for us here. And there are others at institutions at university level. These things are very good to have. They enable and capacitate innovation at a certain level. However, come back to the point we made at the beginning. What is happening grassroots level? What's happening on the ground? What's happening there? And if 1 in 3 South Africans don't know about AI, then the public education is, of course, key for us. So going back to what my current focus is, which is to take things like the maturity assessment framework, the South African National AI Policy, to go to industry bodies like Health Professions Council of South Africa, which I have done. And I called them 2 weeks ago. I am aware that they have a latest booklet on a draft set of regulations for healthcare professionals on the use of AI in healthcare. They said to me, we are finalizing and tabling for approval at the end of September. Now, this is in the South African context. It will be released mid-October for official use by healthcare professionals. And I'm following that closely. So to that end, I developed this kind of foundational resource, which I'm distributing to doctors across the board, a set of, it's a kind of comparison of what are international frameworks, what's the South African view like, and what does it mean for healthcare? Does it apply? And how do you start thinking about it? So it activates their thinking. But on the ground, what I'm currently doing is doing the public education work through radio and television. And for the new year, please God, that this works, because there's a lot of work involved. But doing talks at schools, of course, with my revised, which will be released soon, AI for Everyone Handbook. And the AI for Everyone Handbook comes and is in part seeded by the 12-part AI series I wrote in 2018, but of course revised for the 2025-2026 view. And so these are important, I think, places to ask. You asked an absolutely brilliant question. Where does policy, or what does it look like in action? And this is, I think, what it may look like in action.
Thanks so much, Naz. And by the way, when I asked about the solution head on, what can we do? I was talking about what can everybody, right? Not you, Naz, because I know that you're doing a lot. And just listening to you now, what came to mind is that education is a big piece, right? Because AI literacy, and we spoke about that with Mark Spaeth in the last episode as well. It's so important because not just, in South Africa, but we have a large part of the population oblivious, maybe even using ChatGPT, but oblivious about many aspects of what does that mean really? What's happening right now in this planet, like this revolution, that if it's a bubble or not, I don't know, but it's happening. It's the new arms race. I know that we want to talk about, chemical weapons and treaty, and we even didn't go there, and it's nearly time for us to wrap up. But I think maybe what can we do? I think education, there's the whole conversation around data representation, etc. But probably education, of the masses is an important one, because then it's not just a few people, scattered around having this conversation, but it's greater awareness and not what they say, not blowing my own trumpet, but that's one of the initiatives of the Mindful AI Manifesto, was really to raise awareness, because I think the more people that are aware of the benefits as well as the impacts and where's the gap, the faster we can move and we can hold organizations accountable. Yes, because things are moving really fast and legislation is not.
You asked the question initially, what is the solution and how do people understand this? And I went off on a different tangent, so forgive me for not answering it initially. With of course, there's no definitive solution, but a point of view, a perspective is that I always maintain asking the right questions, but you have to be informed in order to ask the right question. You have to be empowered in the thinking to ask the right question. And asking the right questions are, when I have this device in my hand, no matter what that might be, a simple thing like connecting to a public Wi-Fi, putting in your, doing sensitive transactions, sensitive activity online, like banking, logging into your password manager on your Google app, or anything that has the capability for you to be exposed, is already where we are sitting. You look at this, the cybersecurity awareness, or the level of security that a person has on their person or about themselves, and the level of care that they have around using these tools, devices that they have. Simple thing like, I'm sitting in an office, I'm working on my laptop, I walk away, I don't lock my machine, I don't lock my phone, I walk away. What might that look like for my understanding or my security as a person? And as a responsible digital citizen, you have the responsibility to make sure that you are tweaking your behaviors and your habits in order to protect yourself and others. The second to that is, I'm not going to say watching your speech, because we can't dictate to people. They have the right to free speech. Everyone does. And how do we protect them around that? Of course, there are exceptions to the rule, but the adage, I may not agree with what you say, but I'll fight to the death to defend what it is that you believe in and what you say. And to that point, again, there are extremes in which we can't fight on what someone may believe in. Absolutely. Things that are non-negotiables, the killing of children, the rape of women, the harm to the environment, etc., etc. There are extremes around that which you cannot defend. But in the rights of people in general, the solutioning is asking the right questions, having the significant level of care, not just for yourself, but for others around you, which talks to the spirit of Ubuntu, an African philosophy, as you and everyone knows, is I am because you are because I am, and vice versa. And just having that sense of care and a natural curiosity in order to deepen understanding. Therefore, speaking things that are of value, of understanding, and knowing that eventually translates into a certain data point that is cleaned up, labeled, structured, sent to a training set, sent to a model that is being trained for an output, is a level of understanding we must get to.
I just, I think one of the, just following on that, one of the reasons that, this is the Mindful AI podcast is that those are qualities that we need to cultivate in ourselves as human beings to be wise stewards of any technology, of AI technology. And, to the extent that we can cultivate kindness and care and compassion and patience and equanimity or whatever those inner qualities are, that that will be reflected eventually in these AI models, and that's a very, very human thing to do, which is very interesting. But yeah, so thank you for sharing that. I think that's great.
Thanks,
Thank you
Martin.
so
And
much,
that's the full
Martin.
circle, right? You're welcome. What, Martin? Thank you. Wise words. We should just stop at Martin. Wise words to close, but I can't help. So I want to say, that's the full circle, right? That's the why we call the Mindful AI Manifesto. Exactly what Martin says, because AI can be only as mindful and as responsible as the people behind it. The humans behind it. I believe. The humans designing and driving it. It's interesting. Someone. I can't remember what was the occasion. Someone mentioned that, but AI cannot be mindful. And I think there was a misinterpretation of what we mean with the Mindful AI podcast. Now, AI cannot be mindful. Of course not. AI will be solutions will only be as mindful as the humans behind. That's what we mean with the Mindful AI podcast. So,
And I mean,
can you repeat that, Martin? So we close with your words, please.
No, but yeah, just on that point, I mean, AI can't be ethical either, because it doesn't have intention. You need to intend something to be, doing harm or non-harm. That's not a capacity of AI. It's a statistical prediction model. So we are the stewards of ethical or mindful or aware or whatever it is we need. Yeah. So yeah, maybe that's it. We're, like Matt said, we're coming towards the end here. I always find myself saying that, we need to schedule like a second or take two, or because there's so many things that we could go into. I think that every single episode we always end up there. Let's do a part 2. Because an hour is just an hour.
But an hour nonetheless, which both of you have facilitated an incredible conversation. And I thank you very deeply for being able to share these important thoughts that are important for me, but I know need to be said in order to spark thinking, curiosity in others, so that they too ask the questions. They have the courage and the bravery to do so. We're living in a world that is kind of tilted at the moment. I feel like we're being gaslit every second you watch the news. I cannot take it anymore, with the amount of pain and hurt in the world, and then the absolute mentalness that's going on all over the show, especially in politics. So we've got to center ourselves, come back, and the two of you have allowed us to do that this morning for me, and the afternoon for you, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. It was a joy having you on.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks.
Thank you.